Welcome, everyone, to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. I'm your host, Coach Justin. I'm here with Coach Katie, and this is episode 79. And today we're going to be talking about endurance training and relationships. So we've had some content-heavy episodes lately, and when we're recording this, we still have a couple episodes that are in the bank that are still to come out. And so I really kind of wanted to soften the conversation a little bit, maybe get a little bit more vulnerable. And so this is going to be a coach's corner type of episode. And
it's going to be vulnerable.
I
think we already started out.
I'm not quite sure on how to introduce this thing. But
before we even started, we started diving in, and I'm like, I feel like we need to start the episode because some of this is pretty raw, and vulnerable already.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna talk about kind of balancing relationships and how endurance training can sometimes be a challenging part of a relationship, especially if one person is really in. I think it's probably challenging also if both partners are really into endurance sports, and maybe when you add kids, it's even harder. But it's probably really hard, I think, when one person is very into it and the other isn't. And then there's that trying to be understanding of the partner who isn't, trying to understand the role of endurance sports and how much time it takes, a challenge. So I think that's, and we'll kind of talk about both of our experiences too. And that's where it's going to get a little bit vulnerable, right?
Yeah, I wanted to frame this conversation in terms of how do endurance athletes who tend to be more A-type personalities than most. I don't know if there's a selection bias that's there, but given that I think both of us are A-type personalities, and I know that this is something that I have, I don't want to say struggled with, but I have had to encounter over a decade of being in this sport and trying to manage important relationships, whether that's with a spouse or significant other or children. If you're not in a relationship, if you want to foster relationships with friends and things, how do you manage the relationships in your life and still commit the time and structure that's needed in order to pursue your goals in endurance sports? And I will say that as you progress from shorter races to longer races, the training grows with it. And in that growth requires a specific skill set and how to manage that training volume so that it doesn't impact those important relationships in your life, because the people that go with you, they endure the training just like you do. And this is something that's common that I talk with my athletes about, is when I sit down with a potential athlete, I sit down with their spouse as well, and and with a significant other. And it may not be the first conversation that we have. Sometimes I'll just meet one-on-one with the prospective athlete. And then based on the end of that conversation, I say, if this is something that you want to go forward with, I want to bring your significant other into the conversation, because I want this to be an open area of discussion to where everybody at the table knows what they're getting into. And, the support system is just as important as anything else. I mean, these people, they make sacrifices, they lose time together with you, like downtime and, date nights and things like that. I think that this is important. And it's something that I'll clearly be honest with. I've struggled over the years in relationships and trying to manage what I tend to have is like tunnel focus. So if I have a race that's on, if there's something that I'm focused on, a lot of other things tend to go by the wayside. And it's not on purpose. It's not like I set out to, purposefully do that, but it's just kind of like what happens. And it's something that, my wife and I, I've had conversations lately because of it. And so it's through these conversations that I've had with my wife, and kind of the new scenario that we're kind of operating under is what spurred this idea on bringing this to the podcast, because I do think it's relevant and it's important. So let's start off and let's progress this to where we talk about what are the demands for endurance training. And I know that the demands are going to be unique to the distance in which you're training for.
Right.
That's clearly an obvious thing, but
I think too, for the longer you go or the more you're doing, so like triathlon, I think is very notorious for kind of having these issues because of the 3 sports and then the time, especially if you're like, "I wanna do an Ironman or something," the time it takes. It's not just running, it's like the 3 disciplines, and I definitely think some of these issues can happen. It's not like it doesn't happen in other sports. I think maybe the other one, I guess, with running would probably be, like, ultra marathon distances where someone might be like I was thinking when I was training, there was runs I would do that were, like, 6 hours long, and I'm just gone
Mm.
all day, just running, So it's like, that's where it's probably becomes more of an issue when you're spending, 6, 7, I don't know, maybe 8 hours on a weekend, the entire day training,
Yeah.
your entire weekend, plus you're then tired the rest of the weekend and you don't wanna go out or you have to get up early and train. Like my Sunday long runs, I will really like to do anything crazy on Saturday night, because I have to get up early and do a run, pretty early. It does take a toll, I think, but the longer you go, the more time it takes, the more time it takes away from other things. So
Yeah, so I would agree with you that triathlon I think is a unique beast in terms of you're trying to master 3 disciplines within one sport. So I think that presents a unique wrinkle or
Mhm.
something that you have to manage. I mean, it was common when I was training for full course, like full Ironman, to do 6 and 7 hour bike rides on a Saturday, and then turn right around and do a 2 hour and 15-minute long run the next day. And so trying to recover from that kind of activity is really, really
Yeah, it's hard.
hard, and you have to be purposeful about it. And if you have a significant other or a spouse who likes to be active and social, that can cause some tension within the relationship because you're exhausted.
Yeah,
And I
I
mean,
don't wanna
I
do
don't
that.
I don't care who you are. If you just knocked out a 6 hour bike ride and you just rolled out 100 miles on the bike, which is common during full course training, right? There's going to be some recovery that's needed.
Yeah, and
And
if you try to go out, you're gonna be,
and
like,
if and
falling asleep.
you're trying to work with your spouse and say, okay, yeah, I want to do date night because you know that it's important for the health of your relationship as well as it's something that they want to do. So you don't want them to feel like they're constantly having to sacrifice and that they can't do what it is that they would like to do. And if that's going out, for dinner or going out to a movie or whatever, you don't want to make them sacrifice that because they're already sacrificing enough. And so it's really hard
Mhm.
on the athlete side. It's like, okay, now I've got to muster up the energy to be able to do this and not look like I'm like dragging and that I don't want to be there, because that's something that I've actually struggled with, where it's like, okay, I got to pull myself together and do this, but it looks like I'm just like the Walking Dead that's going out. And so I think that that type of dynamic can create tension within the relationship. And so I think it's important that you either discuss that dynamic with your partner and say, hey, can we come to a compromise and say, for the next, let's say if you're following a 16-week plan, and the last 8 weeks are kind of like the peak stuff, and you're just like, we'll still be active during the front half of this training plan, but I really would like to do well on this race, and I'm willing to sacrifice and put my body on the line to do this. Are you willing to, let's say, sacrifice date night for the next 8 weeks? We'll do like stay at home date nights and dinner and a movie kind of thing, to where we're still spending some quality time together, but the act of going out is still, I mean, it's challenging for me. I don't know if it's challenging for everybody else, but it takes a lot of internal energy for me to
It
go
would
out.
depend
But
on what, like, the circumstances were. Like, if it was just to go out to eat and maybe chill, maybe as long as we weren't out super late, but if it was involved, like, being social, I think that's where I struggle because it's like when I'm really
yeah,
tired and I'm sort of more of an introvert anyways, so the energy it takes me to be socializing, it takes a lot out of me. I like to be social, I like people, but for me, trying to muster up the energy to go out and do like a party, like a adult party, I guess, or there's some other people involved, I'm always like, I'm already sort of burnt out from the training,
Yeah.
and then that's just like doesn't fill my cup. It kind of empties my cup a little bit, like, to be honest, to be like around a lot of people. So then I just feel even more depleted, So it really depends on the situation. Where some people who are maybe training like that, they're also very social. So maybe that like fills up their cup and they deal with it fine. I don't know. I think it's probably
Yeah.
individual, but I do think it is. I think for most people they can kind of relate though. I mean, after like a really long ride, no matter how social you are, you're still going to be pretty tired. It still might be a lot, especially if you have to get up again and do another workout or something the next day because you're training for an Ironman. So then you have to do like a long run the next day or something. Then it's a little bit more challenging. I think that's probably why I would recommend. Yeah, I definitely think if you want to pursue something like this, like or something that's going to involve a lot of time training, to have discussions with your spouse. Like, don't sort of be like, I'm doing this, and not sort of bring them into the conversation, because I think that's a problem, obviously, because the most relationships are conversations, communication are key. So definitely bringing
Hmm.
the spouse in and kind of like you do. Like, I think that's great that you, with your coaching clients, that you do that. I don't think many coaches maybe do that, and they're just focused on the person they're talking to, and they don't think about the side of having this spouse as part of the conversation. So I think that's great. A lot of the athletes I train so far for running haven't have had spouses, but they're not training for anything substantial. So I ask those questions about, making sure they're telling me if they need to have a specific night, for date night, or like I try to bring that in, but I haven't, because I don't coach anyone that's doing anything like an Ironman or something like that involves a lot of
Hmm.
time. It's not something where I've brought the spouse in, but I do love that idea of like bringing that person in. I think that's great because I think it has to be part of the conversation. And that other thing too is I feel like um, it can be it's easier for the spouse or the partner to make um those sacrifices if you're like, I'm doing this one Ironman this year. I'm going to really train for this.
Yeah.
I'm doing one. But I think when it becomes this like perpetual, someone's always training for something and they're not, or that's fine if they're always training for something, but to be perpetually training for a marathon, or you finish one and you're going right into the training for another, and it's taking up so much of your time all of the time. I think that's a problem in my opinion. I think that's why I generally choose to do like one marathon a year. Like even this year, I've already sort of decided I maybe depending on how I do with grandmas, I might do another one, but it's such a sacrifice that I probably won't. And if I do, it's going to be at the very, very end of the year. So I don't have to go right into another training cycle. I have some time
Hmm.
to have some freedom in my calendar to be able to then do more things with my son and my husband, and I'm not then training and taking all this time up with my training for the marathon all the time. And so when I do start, so now it's starting to ramp up with the long runs, and that's probably where the issue is, the long runs and then the double days where I have to train not only in the morning, but then I'm
Yeah.
training in the afternoon. And so I'm taking time in the afternoon to go run. That's hard. And so I have to have that conversation, and that's really starting up in April. It's probably where it's really going to have like the biggest training blocks for me, April and May. But really, it's only like 2 to 2.5 months. So it's just having that conversation of like, this is when I'm going to be really ramping up my volume. This is what I'm going to be tired on Sunday. I'm probably not going to be able to run around with, my son and play tag, on those after a 20 miler.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to be like sitting down, so it's having those conversations with my family. But I'm not doing that in perpetuity where I'm like always, always always training for this long races and always taking that time. It's like a give and take. And I think if I'm having that conversation and they kind of know that maybe, especially my husband, that maybe there'll be certain times that he might have to hang out with Theo more, or that I might not be as much of a fun mom because I'm tired.
Yeah.
It may only be that time of the year. And then the rest of the year, most of the rest of the year, I'm then doing 5K training, or, maybe my
Right.
long runs are not longer than 12 miles. And so it only takes me a couple hours, so yeah, that's kind of how I think, I'm not saying that you have to do it that way, but I just think you have to kind of think about, maybe the way you're training, what you're training for, and trying to be careful not to overbook your training schedule, or your race schedule so that that's all you're ever doing, Does that make sense?
Yeah, one of the things that I kind of struggle with right now in my training plan is, I'm not training for any long races. They're fairly short races that I have on the books. And I think the reason that kind of God gave me the experience that I had with Ironman Florida, back in December was, to really kind of check me, because I love training and I love the sport, and I love, every aspect of it, because it's been part of me for so long. And I've always been of the mindset, it's like, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. I love this. And, this is me. But this year in particular, as I'm kind of like ramping up the business and, there's a lot more demands on my time with that, I've kind of lost the desire to race right now. And I think that I'm actually kind of regretting signing up for the 2 races that I do have on the plan, because I signed up for them before I did Florida. I was like Black Friday kind of like discount registration. So I was like, I did these races last year. I really liked them. Let me
Did
go ahead
you
and
make
sign
it?
up.
Yeah.
And then I did Florida, and I was like, I really don't want to do those races, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to sign up and just not do it. So,
Hmm.
um, but
You
right
can't
now, the way
transfer
that
you can't transfer the race entry.
I don't know if I could, but I would feel bad internally because there's no valid reason why I can't do them. It's not like I'm hurt or anything like that. So I'm healthy enough to race. So, deferring it just because I'm busy, to me, that's just, I don't know. I'd have a hard time doing that.
I feel like people
But,
are busy all the time and they can't train
well, if
for
they're not
things.
going to race because they're busy, then nobody would ever race because we're all busy. So
Like,
I guess one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with now is just the structure of my plan. And, I've got the aerobic side of it and I've got the strength side. And so there's practically, I think four out of the 7 days, I have evening workouts and morning workouts. So I have 2 a days,
mm-hmm.
4 days out of the 7 days. And so that's hard.
That is hard.
And it's hard on the relationship as well, because I'm gone in the morning and then I'm gone again in the evening. And so when my wife comes home, she likes to, she of course wants to spend time with me, but I'm I'm at the gym, doing a workout in the evening where we would normally be spending time together. And then by the time I get home, these strength sessions are pretty challenging, and so they take a
Right.
while to get through. And then it's pretty late, and it's, to be honest with you, it's getting hard right
Right.
now. And I don't want it to impact my relationship, because I've seen what it does in previous relationships that I've had. And so, I mean, I'll be honest with everybody and completely vulnerable. I've been married multiple times before, and they just weren't healthy relationships. And this one is, the one that I have with my wife is a really healthy relationship. We did it right. And so I don't want to do anything to jeopardize that. And I don't want past behaviors to kind of creep in
Right.
into this relationship, because I know what kind of toxicity it starts to inject. And I know that my training is one of those things that can inject some tension and toxicity into the relationship, simply because of my personality. I'm very much an A-type personality. I'm very much check the box kind of person. I focus on like one thing at a time. I have a hard time multitasking. And so when I'm focused on one thing, that's the one thing that I'm doing. And that's why I get this tunnel vision. And so when typically I have a race on the schedule and what I'm training for, that's the way that I behave. It's not something that I really particularly like about myself, because I wish I could be that kind of person that doesn't just get sucked in and let it consume you. But I am.
I don't know if I have any, as we've said before, neither of us are psychologists. So I don't, it's like
Yeah.
hard for me to think of like, oh, well, if you just do it, if you just do this, or, I feel like maybe, um, y- I think that's a really good trait to be able to be like so focused on something I think, the type A, I mean, obviously that type A personality can also be not such a good trait, but I think
Yeah.
but it is hard when you're so focused on a goal and wanting to achieve something to let go or to have other things you're focusing on, or to like let go, and sometimes let go of something, in order to like find that balance, or realize like, okay, I can't do, whether it's doing all the strength that you're doing or something has to give. Like it's sometimes hard when you think, because I think there's that mentality, if I give this thing up or I reduce the amount of the strength training I'm doing, or just kind of maybe make this a little bit more efficient somehow, or do I really need to do all of this? Like, is
Yeah.
there a way to make it more streamlined so you only need to do 3 days? I don't know, but I think sometimes we get sort of stuck in the like this fear of like, if I do that, then I'm not gonna achieve my goal, because more is
Yes.
better. You
Perfect.
know what I mean? Like, and I think that's
Yep.
sometimes the issue, or even have that conversation maybe with your strength coach person that does that. Like, is there a way, I'm having this struggle. This is 4 days. I'm not a strength athlete, is there a way to make this more efficient, because this is becoming an issue, so it's hard though, because I
Yeah.
think I'm always thinking of, oh, I should be doing this, or and like, and it's always like I need to be adding more, otherwise, or if I don't do something, I'm not getting the benefit of that. And I'm thinking like, recently I've kind of not been as good about the strength, and like I wanted to add plyometrics in again, and I haven't done that. And that's that worry, that fear that like, if you take something out or you reduce it,
Hmm.
you're missing out, or something like that. You're not going to get the
Yeah.
most, or you're not going to get to
Yep.
your goal. And I think that gets in our way. That can really get in our way. And there's often ways to streamline things that you can get even more out of it for less. Like that's something I've toiled with a lot. Obviously, there's only to a certain point. You're not going to be able to cut corners, but sometimes there are more efficient ways of doing things. And sometimes we, as endurance athletes, I do think we do a lot of stuff that we do. Like, oh, I need more volume. So we just do, I kind of fell into that trap a little bit with my last marathon. I was like adding on these double days to get more training in. And I think that actually maybe harmed me, because I was just running for the sake of running extra for no real reason other than because I wanted to hit 75 miles that week, More volume is better, but if it's not allowing you to recover well for your really key workouts, or you're not, and it's hard sometimes to know where that line is. I think that's one of the things I've thought too for this marathon cycle, is like you're kind of like cutting out the things that you don't really need. I'm just focusing on what's really important in the training. I don't know what the answer is for you, but yeah.
I don't think any of us have answers to this, but I mean, I think it's definitely worth talking about, even if it's just the vulnerability part of it. So if somebody else is listening and they're just like, yeah, I can totally relate to that, then I mean, we may not come to a conclusion on how to
How
fix
to
it,
fix it. Yeah.
but
It's
if
just,
you know if you at least know that there's other people out there that kind of struggle with the same thing, then that's kind of progress, I think, to a certain extent. So, um, I mean, we're not here to like fix relationships. That's not what we're here for.
we're just here to kind of talk about our own struggles, kind of bring this up as a topic, because I know I I think this is a topic that a lot of people, at least endurance athletes, struggle with, but maybe don't bring up a lot to their friends, or maybe they do, but they don't talk about it in the running, on their running group chats, or you know what I mean, or they're out on a
Yeah.
long run. This isn't something I generally bring up, even with some of my friends that I do my long runs with. I don't want it to seem like I don't have like, I don't know, like I'm struggling, relationship struggles I think are a tender subject sometimes, or so
Yeah.
it's hard to bring this up. And but I do think a lot of people kind of experience it in one way or another, maybe not to a severe degree, but I think there's often some sort of tension, at some point in someone's training. Um, and so I think most people can relate in that sense. And then I think in my experience, it's then bringing in the children, bringing in the young children, especially into the equation. And that is where it gets really challenging, at least for me,
Yeah.
because you don't have like the freedom anymore generally to do the training. You're kind of balancing, okay, who's taking care of the kids, So there's less time and flexibility in that in itself. So it gets a little bit more challenging, but I don't know. I don't know if we want to go down that down that road at this point, or if we want to
I
kind of.
mean, I mean, if you're in multisport, you should have probably heard by now of like, the Ironman divorce. I mean, it's something that we've obviously seen. It's not all that great, but I mean, it is out there, and it's I don't want to say maybe it's common, but it does
it's a
happen.
word. I mean, people, it's like a
Yeah.
theme, right? So it must happen. Do you remember like way back in the beginning, or like at some point when we started these podcasts, I brought up that I read that book, The Iron Dad. I like
Yeah,
listened
that
to
guy
it.
always he's in my brain. You know, when you brought up that story.
Read it if you're curious. That one, I felt like I cringed a lot because of some of the imbalances he had in his life, with especially with like 3 children. And his wife, what his wife had to endure did make me cringe a little bit. And I know that, but I feel like I was seeing it not from his perspective. I was seeing it from her perspective as a female,
Yeah.
as a mom with kids, because I was actually identified more with that piece than I was like his piece of wanting to do these Ironmans. And so I think that's where I was like, oh my gosh, like she is an angel. I don't know. I mean, it's probably the, probably it's hard because I'm thinking to myself, well, my husband has said this to me before when I've been upset because he's been working on something late or doing something, in the shop, working on his trucks and things, because that's what he likes to do. That's his kind of hobby. Is like, well, at least I'm not out at the bars drinking, So I'm like, I guess
Yeah.
there's probably better things. Like an Ironman is maybe a better thing. I mean, at least you're not, I don't know. Like, so I have
Oh,
had
yeah.
him say that. I'm like, so I don't know. I'm trying to not like be, I just like, I don't want to be like judgmental either. I guess I'm kind of coming at this and it's sounding like that. I'm kind of judgmental of this Iron Dad. I don't know who, I can't remember the name of the person that wrote, the gentleman who wrote the book, but, it did bring up some tension for me, some uncomfortable feelings. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Of what he was doing and like some of the things he was talking about with his family, it did bring some uncomfortable feelings for me.
I'll be honest with you. I was judgmenting. I was
Okay,
judging the guy. So
okay,
I'll
you'll
be
be
flat
honest.
out
Okay,
honest
I mean,
about it.
I guess I was. I don't like to be judgmental, but you're right. I'm being honest. I think for me, I feel like in a way, I also felt bad for him because I'm like, oh my gosh, if you keep doing this, your wife is going to divorce. I kept thinking that, like, oh man, like in my head, I was like, oh, don't keep doing this. Like, don't, wait till
Yeah.
your kids are like teenagers and maybe go back to it instead of when they're little, because your wife, I don't know how much longer she's going to be able to take of this. And I kept thinking that in my head, like if I were to talk to this person, like if he were to ask me for advice, I would be like, please don't continue training for these Ironmans. Like give it a break. Do like a half, do like some Olympic distance. Those are just as fun and like you don't
Yeah.
have to train as hard. And when your kids are older, like maybe in their teens, you can kind of go back to it, because from my understanding, it wasn't as though he was like going to become professional and it mattered if he was in his 40s or 50s that much, maybe. And I know age is always a factor. And that's one thing I think about a lot is if I wait to do these marathons till I'm in my 50s, I'm not going to be able to run them as fast. And I'm trying to, get a time goal. So there's always that factor. But that was what I was kind of thinking. I don't know about you, Justin.
I'm glad that you brought up this guy because I think this extends the conversation in a place that I kind of wanted to go as well. And it's not just relationships with significant others and spouses, because, I mean, the children, if you do have kids, I mean, that is something that you have to consider. Do
A
these race
relationship,
distances
yeah, with
fit into my life right now and the way that it's structured and the demands that I have on my time? Is it worth it even though you want to do longer races, does it fit? And what are the opportunity costs that's going to be tied to you choosing to do these races and the time that it requires of you? That was something that I had to consider when my kids were younger
right.
as well. So it's just like, at that time my kids were fairly young, but their mom and I had split up and we had divorced, and so I was effectively like a single dad. Because I committed to being as active in their lives as possible. So we split time 50-50. So they were with their mom one week and then they would come and they would be with me for a week. And so those weeks that they were my responsibility, they were in my care. I was a single parent, so I had to kind of learn how to manage my time accordingly. And that came to a point where I had to determine like what distance of race I could commit to at that stage of their lives, because I was not willing to be an absentee dad.
Right.
And not miss out on those opportunities in that time with them. But then again, I wanted to show them, I wanted to teach them what it meant to set goals and work hard. So I didn't want to completely sacrifice that time and commitment to achieving what I wanted to achieve, because I felt that it was still important and it played a role in something that I wanted to instill in my sons, this value of work ethic and the value of, hey, this is when you set a goal, you have to do what is needed in order to achieve that. And sometimes that stuff is hard. It's going to require sacrifices, not just from you, but others around you as well. And so I felt that that was a valuable lesson, but I didn't need to do a full Ironman in order to teach that lesson. So those are decisions that you have to make as a parent based on what stage of life your children are at. Once your kids reach teenage years, they don't want to spend time with you anyway. So maybe that's a great time to go ahead and go for that Ironman or that ultra marathon. They don't want to talk to you anyway. They're in their room, playing PlayStation or whatever. So feel free to train as much as you want.
They probably don't. Yeah, they're not going to want to be around you as much. But yeah, I agree. I think that's probably one of the bigger, with that Iron Dad thing that was concerning me with the book, was I felt like, oh man, like there's these children and as you know, little kids grow very quickly and they change very quickly. And so, that's something that's very important to me, is to not be so involved with training that I cannot spend time with my son, or that I'm taking tons of time away from him to train, or I'm so tired all the time that I can't engage. It definitely is harder sometimes when I do have those longer runs, but that's why I don't do that all the time. But the other days of the week, I'm still hanging out. We to go to the park, going swimming with him tomorrow afternoon. We do stuff together. He's got like a CrossFit Kids. I'll meet them there. I'll take him to the bakery. We'll go, so we'll do stuff together with just me and my son. A lot of times I want to spend time with him, but I'm also very fortunate. It's not I still have a lot of work to like, it's not like I'm working part-time. I probably work more than part-time hours, but I have pretty flexible schedule most of the time. So that allows me to be able to like pick him up certain days right after school. He doesn't always have to be in the after school program. So then we'll be able to hang out with him or drive him to school. And, I can be a little more flexible. So because I think it's harder for a parent who has like a full-time job to be able to dedicate a lot of that full amount of time to like even a marathon and have children. I just don't know that particular scenario. I think if I were in that scenario, I would not personally do the marathon training. I would have had to be like, okay, that particular goal is not a goal I can achieve now. So maybe I need to focus on half marathons for a while until he's older. And then, maybe I wouldn't have focused so much on this particular goal. And I know that I'm lucky in that sense, but that doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean I'm just sailing through in an easy time here, and I'm finding parenting super swell all the time. And that was one of the things we were kind of vulnerable about before, but I definitely have challenges. I think the biggest challenge now for me is that, and I think a lot of parents will relate to this, childcare is a little expensive. And even though now we no longer have daycare, I'm still recovering from the costs of almost 6 years of daycare, because my son didn't start school until he was just before the age of 6. So we had about 5-6 years of some sort of daycare, not always full time, and that's expensive. And then he does have like a little bit of after school program, costs and things like that we do pay a little bit. But in our budget, we don't have a lot of money for budgeting like a nanny or someone to come in and to watch him. At the cost is like expensive now, like $20 an hour to come watch him and then pay for going out to eat, go somewhere fancy. So my husband and I really don't, and we don't have a lot of family in the area. None of our family his family is not particularly helpful. I mean, his dad, anyway, sometimes they're helpful, and it's not their fault, but the rest of his family isn't, and my family doesn't live here. So we have no family help. And so we don't have date night. Like my husband and I don't get to spend a lot of time together without Theo. Very rarely. I mean, it's very rare. Maybe once every 3 to 6 months we get to go out, and that's not enough. I know that, and it's hard, so that's, so when we have Theo, either one of us, unless he's in school or after school, has to be around him because he's only 6 years old. So it's a lot of
Right.
like give and take, like, so it doesn't allow a lot of like downtime for either of us. We're either working or sometimes doing our hobby, and then I have Theo. So while Dustin's like working on trucks and his Bronco, he's just likes to do a lot of vehicle stuff. My downtime is running, which isn't a very like downtime activity really. Like I'm training. So all
Mhm.
outside of that, I'm either with Theo or we're both with my son Theo, but we're sort of this back and forth and give and take of like who's got Theo, who's taking Theo. And my son is lovely. He's very high energy and very neat, like kind of a more needy child. He's been a little bit more challenging than the normal sort of situation. Quote, I don't, that word normal I don't
Yeah.
really like, but he's a very gifted, lovely child, but a little more needs a little bit more attention. And so it's just been hard. I feel I'm kind of in survival mode a little bit myself. Kind of not exactly at this moment. It's just kind of like work. I do enjoy being with Theo, but it's, we hang out. But honestly, like I like to be around him, but
Yeah.
I don't love going to the park all the time. I don't like going to the swimming pool is tiring because I'm playing with him for like 2 hours straight. I mean, I'm in the water with him playing. It's not like I'm just sitting on the sideline being like, fun. So in
Yeah.
general, he wants me to be engaged, which is great. So I'll get in there, I'll go to the park unless there's lots of other kids he's playing with. I'm usually engaging the whole time. So it's not super relaxing. So it's fun, but it's a lot. And I just feel like sometimes I'm just like I don't really have a chance to just sit down and like even watch Netflix or anything like that. I don't generally get to just
Mhm.
watch shows and hang out, and that is something I miss a little bit. And so I feel like it's kind of like survival mode. I'm definitely not maybe like completely thriving, even though from the surface looking on, you'd be like, oh, your running's going really well. And, but I'm just being honest. It's just kind of where I'm at right now. And I know it'll probably get easier. And hopefully, as Theo gets a little older, maybe we'll have more opportunities for us my husband and I to be together, but it makes it hard. I mean, I think there's got to be other people out there listening who have similar situations without much assistance from families, and they're kind of like training like I am. That's kind of my coping strategy and like in my way of like keeping even keel. Cause I think if I didn't run and I didn't train, I'd be like angry more often
Yeah.
than I should. Maybe a little bit unhinged. No, I'm just kidding. So it's keeping me together, and it is where I am right now. And that's just the pure honesty of my situation. Like I'm being real raw here. So
Yeah.
that's my struggle. I don't know if people I don't know if I have a solution. I think a lot of people would be like, oh, try to budget in, you need to spend time with your spouse. Like, try to budget that. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot easier said than done when you've got stuff you're trying to pay off and things like that. So I get it. And maybe we'll get there. But right now, that's not where we are.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of, somebody saying you have to budget, because that's actually a conversation that I'm literally having with my wife at the moment. So we've been talking about this for a few days because I've significantly ramped up the activity for the business. And so,
No, yeah.
there's a lot more like social media content that I'm building, trying to build this business up and, support the podcast. And then, I have a full-time job on top of this, and, a dad and a husband and everything else. So there's a lot going on. And so I will be honest, over the past few weeks, I've been extremely overwhelmed. I just relaunched my website, a complete redesign of the website, and then I'll redesign it again later this year as I move platforms. And then there's the social media aspect. I'm really trying to learn how to capitalize on that and then filter in my training at the same time. And so I can kind of tell when my wife is starting to be affected by my absenteeism, because if I have to be honest, that's what it is, So I've learned the signals that I get from her when, she's feeling like I'm not spending time with her. And so, there are times where I have to come back and reassure. It's like, hey, I know that I'm kind of absent. I'm trying to make this as short as possible in terms of time frame. This is kind of, I would much prefer to, kind of sit on the couch and sit beside you and, watch a Netflix show rather than sitting in my tiny little office, working on social media posts or,
Mhm.
some new product that I want to roll out, with Tabula Rasa Racing, or some new training plan that I'm trying to come up with and design. There's always something that's kind of going through in my head. And so by the time I'm done, my brain is so fried at the end of the day, I don't have much left for anything else. And so we've been talking lately. It's like she knows the kind of personality that I am and that I'm very structured and very A-type personality, very checkbox kind of guy. And she's like, we just have to put me on the
Mhm.
schedule.
Oh, okay.
And so, even though it sounds so bad, it sounds like
No, it doesn't.
I've got to, like, I have to schedule to spend time with my wife. To me, it sounds bad, but
I don't think so.
to me, with my personality, it's just how I think.
No, I
And
put
so
everything on the schedule.
I've been trying to implement this schedule now for like a couple days. And it's like, if I can like stop working by 9 p.m., that would
Yeah.
give me from 9 to 10 to kind of spend with her. And that gives my brain a chance to kind of unwind. But I mean, there were 2 nights this week where I was up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, working on stuff, and then up at, 5:30 or 6 a.m. So I'm rolling on like, 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And so it's pretty challenging, but I can see its impact on my relationship with her. And, it's not just the training, it's everything that kind of
With
goes
it.
with it, the recovery time that's needed, the nutrition side of it, making sure that we're eating well, which takes effort, and it's one more thing that you have to spend time on. And so it's not just the training, it's everything that goes with it,
Yeah.
robs you
Well,
of opportunities to do
other
other
things.
things.
Yeah. And then if you're
So
training and then you're also trying to do other things and it stacks up, stacks on, more time that you have to spend. And yeah, I think that's hard. I don't think you should feel bad about putting things on your schedule. I think because and I'm starting to realize more and more that I may have ADHD, but anyways, that's another topic. But I have to put everything on my schedule. I put in my schedule even when I have to go pick up Theo because it's not that like I haven't forgot him yet, but it's probably because the reminder is in my schedule, right? And it
yeah.
pings at me. I'm thinking about it, but it's like it's there and it also reminds me. I put almost everything in my calendar. If I was gonna have a date night with Dustin, I'd probably have it in there as a reminder. I would because it's like that's how I work. I do think if I didn't do that, maybe I would miss more things. And I have that's happened before. With being sort of a crazy, having these various things that I do job wise and then training and trying to fit that in. I even put my training in as an appointment. Like it's in my calendar as kind of like an appointment for myself. And then I block out other things so that I can train. So I do very much go by a calendar. And if that helps you to be like, oh yeah, I've got to, it's time for me to wrap this up. I have to spend time with Stephanie. I think that's absolutely okay. I don't think it's like because it just reminds you. It's giving that little like ding in your calendar
Yeah.
visual reminder to say like, yes, I need to wrap this up. It's important for me to spend time with her, just like you would put your training plan together and you would have that scheduled out. So I absolutely think that's a great idea. Like I don't know, maybe people are judging that, but for the type of personality you have, and
Yeah.
I mean, so not a bad idea. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. Is so if you can figure out a way to decipher the signals that you
Yeah.
receive from your significant other or from your children for that matter, because they will send you signals as well that they need to spend time with you. You have to be really in tune. You have to be really in tune to those signals. So
It's hard because, I think if yeah, you can kind of tell when they're like, why are you going for a run again? Or, things like that. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes they just want to be with you, and then there's that sense of like parent guilt or mom, I call 'em for me, it's my mom guilt. Like I get, a little bit, but then that's why I have tried to balance it. Like tomorrow, well, I did my long run today because of the wind. I'm gonna do a run and then go spend basically the rest of the day. I'm doing an easier run and then spending the rest of the day. But I had to rearrange my schedule a little bit, but I have to spend the rest of the day with Theo and doing fun things with him, right? Because but the majority of the day I wasn't spending as much time with him. So tomorrow is, so I think it's just, yeah, getting those signals, but also making sure, like you're saying, like it's not really, I don't know if I put that in my calendar, but it's like, that's my plan, trying to
Yeah.
think ahead and make sure I'm incorporating him. And I wish I could incorporate my husband more, but like I've said,
That
the
time,
time will come.
I think one of the things that I kind of wanted to bring up is that, the way that the normal, quote unquote, normal schedule is that, we do all of our long trainings on the
Mhm.
weekends. Saturdays and Sundays are usually spent doing these longer sessions. And so there's nothing that says that you have to have a date night on Saturday or Sunday.
Right, it's true, yeah.
So one way to prioritize your relationship and still be able to make time for your structured training is to maybe compromise and have date night or some kind of quality time. You don't have to go out. You don't have to spend all kinds of money, even if it means, once a month you leave the house and you go do something, but the other 3 weeks of the month you do something at home. You have an at-home
Mhm.
date night and just do it during the
Right,
week.
yeah, if you can, that would be
And so, to make that kind of compromise and fit it in, just move it around where it's not the stereotypical, Saturday night, date night kind of thing.
yeah.
You just
The
move it
nice thing
around to
about
where
that
it
is
fits into
it's
your
not as
schedule.
busy on the weeknights than it is on
Yeah.
the weekend. We always go if we go out somewhere to eat, which we might do once a week, we always try to go during the week because the weekends where we are, it's like chaos out, at the restaurants anyways, if you're gonna go out to a restaurant. So you might find it's just a little bit more pleasant and you don't have to maybe, wait or I guess make a reservation in the middle of the week. So it's just maybe a little bit more relaxed in that way. Something to think about. It depends on where you live, but yeah.
Another thing that I kind of wanted to bring up, and this was something that I had done in a previous relationship. So it was something that I've not done with Stephanie is race destinations. I know that this is a big thing for endurance athletes. Hey, we want to travel. That's a great way to kind of, take a vacation. You make it like a race vacation kind of thing. And there was a time where when my kid's mom and I were still married, it was almost like every vacation was a race
Right.
vacation. And it got to the point where she was just like, look, can we just have a vacation that's not a
Right.
race? And so,
It's true.
I kind of took that one to heart and I was just like, So,
I mean, that's true.
um,
That's
but
true. Yeah.
yeah, so one of the things that I did was I sat down and looked at all kinds of races and I put them on a sheet of paper and, where the destination would be. And then I sat down with my significant other at that time and said, these are the races and these are the locations that I would like to do. So these are all the possibilities. Let's pick a place together. I have no preference on, which race that I do, but make it a cooperative effort. So one of the great things that you can do is you can find, it just takes a little bit of due diligence and a little bit of research ahead of time. Find things that you can do within that destination that is not race related. So, if there's a really cool like children's museum in that city, or there's a really cool like art museum that you like, or there's, really good restaurants that you've heard of and you've read the reviews, there's something else that's there for them to do while you're racing. And like an Ironman event
I
can
love
be,
that.
all day. You're talking, 14, 15 hours. And so you can't expect them to just sit there for like 14 hours and just not do anything. That's just unrealistic. So if you can find things that say, hey, this is something that you can do, during the race while I'm out there, and keep the kids occupied or just keep yourself entertained, because that bike can take, 6-7 hours, 6 hours to do. Go do something and have some fun during that time while I'm out. And I think that adds a little bit more to the relationship because it shows them that they are important, that the race isn't the only thing that you're thinking of. You're thinking of them. You're thinking of their enjoyment, and you want them to be entertained as well. You want them to have fun. They're not there just to support you. And so that's one of the things that I did when I was doing destination races. I mean, I don't do those very much anymore, but
Yeah.
just trying to find a way to include them in the
Yeah.
decision
And
making
like
process.
have them
I
have
think
say.
shows
Yeah.
them that they are important, and you're not just saying, "Hey, this is the race that I've signed up for. This is where we're going," and
Deal with it. Yeah.
be prepared.
Just like
You know,
they're like, I never want to go there.
that's not a
Yeah.
healthy way to go
Yeah, I
about it.
agree.
So
I don't, I'm thinking of like most of the destinations I go to also involve families. I think also like if every single time you travel is because of a race, I do think it might be worth considering like having some travel that isn't, necessarily race related. Although even when we decide we're going to travel somewhere, I still think of looking up races. So even I do
so
the
do I.
opposite. Like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we're going to go somewhere and it's not race related. I still will see if there's a race sometimes, So I can't say I'm not guilty of that, but I think kind of not having it be like every single time you travel it revolves around a race necessarily. You know, because I do think that can become problematic, unless you're going somewhere
Yeah.
really fun that everybody wants to go to, and and then you are involved. I think involving people or involving the family is a great idea. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other so
I'll front load a
yeah,
race.
that's
Like,
probably
so if you
better.
decide to a destination, do the race at the beginning of the time that you're there, not at the end. So you get all that race crap out of the way, and then you have the remaining days to
That's what I
enjoy
usually
yourself. And
do. But this
you know,
upcoming summer,
yeah,
I have a weird situation where we have like a family reunion, and then there's this like we're going to be with my mom in Vermont, and then I'm going to do the race, and then we're going to have more time. Then we're going to have the time to relax. It's going to be a really interesting situation, but that was just because too many things are happening all at once. So I don't know. But yeah, I would recommend that because if you're doing it at the end the whole time, you're going to be nervous about the race, or you're not going to be able to, it's just not going to be good, and your family's going to be able to tell because you're not going to be able to be engaged with them because you're going to be thinking about the race. So definitely try to front load the race first, and then do the fun. And then you have the nice thing about that is hopefully you're taking some time off and you can relax and enjoy and not be training and really focus on your family. So I do think that's a great way to go. The other thing
yeah,
I think we had some points here. The one thing I wanted to mention is that sometimes when I'm training a lot, I do get like hyper focused, like outside of the training on constantly consuming information about running. Like I said, I like
yeah,
listen to podcasts and a lot of the books I listen to, especially when I'm in the middle of like a training block because I'm so hyper focused on it, is all related to like endurance or running or things that inspire me. So I feel inspired and it helps me kind of stay motivated during a tough training block, especially when I'm doing more volume. But it seems like I'm constantly thinking about running. Even when I go to bed at
yeah,
night, I'm thinking about my training. How did my training go today? What have I got going on tomorrow? You know what I mean? And I think that's hard because when I'm speaking with my spouse, like it's like hard not to be like he doesn't know it, but I think the good thing is, or maybe is that he doesn't, it's like him trying to talk to me about fixing cars and like mechanical stuff, but just like I'm just like I would love to know more about this, but it's not an interest of mine, so it kind of goes way over my head, and I'm just trying to be like, yeah,
yeah,
like that sounds cool, and I have no idea what you're talking about. That's kind of how it is probably with
yeah,
my running when I'm talking about that with him. So I've just learned to try to talk about other stuff, but it does get hard because if I'm always focused on this content of like running, and that's like even outside of my runs I'm thinking about it, it's, I think that's one thing too, is like I think spouses can kind of get sick of hearing about it. Like, I'm sick of you talking about your training. Can we please talk about anything else? So that was one
yeah,
thing too. And I don't know if I just think something to think about trying to most of the time, unless they're also really like into the same sport and also like a triathlete or something, like they probably don't mind you updating them a little bit. But I think for the most part, that's something I learned is like, just, it's best if I just try to talk about like my son or anything else that isn't training related, because I think Dustin just kind of is like,
yeah.
I don't care, like I just don't care. He cares. He's happy. He wants me to, he's happy that I'm into it, but he doesn't care about how my training went that day. Really, I mean, to a point, but
Yeah.
I doesn't want to hear about it on and on and on about every split and all that stuff. So no, that's harder.
Yeah, diversify the
Diversify the
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah.
Save the running talk to
I always
your running
it's always
friends and
funny when
stuff.
I
Yeah.
when I'm talking with Stephanie and sometimes I'm talking about how the training is going or the business is going, I can kind of see
She's
her
like,
eyes kind of glaze over.
yeah.
Like she's like actively listening, but it's just not registering. So I think she's just being polite and just saying, "Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. All right." And she's just like, "Yeah. Okay." Yeah. It's really kind of an interesting topic because we're trying to find ways to weave together the training and life because sometimes, and I'll speak from my own fault, that sometimes I have a hard time weaving those
Hmm.
in. And so it's like, is it trying to figure out a way to say this? So it's like, does training support my life or is it my life?
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's
Good
kind of the
question.
best way
Yeah.
that I can kind of describe it, because sometimes if I'm going to be honest, I would say that training is my life because I'm a coach too.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, part of it just kind of feeds into it. So I'm constantly testing out new workouts and things like that so I can see, like what works and what doesn't work. What would be something good to give to another athlete? What's good to, develop some kind of specific adaptation for a training plan. So I'm constantly testing out stuff like that. And so that's part of my business. And so, trying to become a better coach. So training ultimately is kind of my
Right.
life because it's my chosen profession, because it
I
impacts
mean,
my
that's true
chosen
for me too,
profession.
because I do a lot of work with athletes, but I guess
But then again,
I think
it's like I'm trying to not allow it
become
to
your
be
life
my life and
entirely.
just become part of my
Right.
life, and it's
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 hard.
hard. And I'll be completely honest and open about it. It's like that is something that I struggle with,
Yeah. I mean,
is
you don't want that to
that
be like the
balance.
all-consuming thing in your life. I do think that the idea though of everything being in balance all the time and like I could say when I'm in my marathon training, like the next like probably really as it's coming up now, kind of now and then in April and May, like the running will be a I'm not say it's like my life because I have other things I'm doing. So I don't it's not like I'm all consumed by it because I have still like my clients and I put a lot of effort into focusing on the people I work with too. And that's a great distraction actually. Because if I'm all consumed by running, it almost like I start to lose sleep and it becomes like actually a bad thing for me. So I have to have other things
Yeah.
too. But the balance is off kilter a little bit and it's more consuming. It's more all consuming during that time and it comes kind of bleeds in a little bit into more it becomes a little bit more of like a bigger part of my life, I guess, but it doesn't like my whole life, right? I think that it's important to remember, like, I feel like when people say, oh, you've got to find the right balance and everything has to be in complete balance, I feel like that's a little bit of a BS thing because it's not realistic. Like things are always going to be a little bit, there's going to be times when things are out of balance. Right now, I think for you, it's a little bit out of balance, but if you can try to figure out how to get it a little bit more in balance, like you'll hopefully get there, but sometimes that happens. It swings a little bit out of balance because you're really hyper focused on something. And as long as that doesn't like happen and it's just the whole becomes all consuming and then you're not able to get sort of back and swing the pendulum a little bit in the other way eventually, then that might be where it becomes a problem. But I think that's, when you're communicating with your spouse, like right now things aren't going to be in great balance because I have these things I'm trying to get set for my business or I'm really training. This is a hard training part of training block for my marathon. This is where it becomes a little bit more time consuming. But as soon as I'm done, I'm going to come back, and it's going to be swing a little bit the other way where I'm going to have a lot more time again, you know, and realizing that you're never, if you're kind of constantly achieving like that perfect balance of like making your spouse happy, always making your kids happy, making everybody else happy and trying to run, it's probably unrealistic. So,
Yeah.
you have to kind of realize that there's going to be a little bit of a give and take. And hopefully your significant other is supportive of that, to an extent. But I think, if you continue to take and never kind of
There's a
give,
limit.
yeah, if you never give
Yeah.
back, then it's a limit, so you have to realize that. And I think that's part of this is just kind of figuring that right balance out, that kind of give and take and pendulum of balance swinging back and forth a little bit to figure that out for yourself. But, you can't, you can't be in a relationship and, always expect that person to be giving, to let you do your training, then you're never
Yeah.
swinging the other way. So I think you kind of have to figure that out too. And if that means that for a little while you're just not able to put in the training that you'd like, but if you're still training, you're still, it's like, but maybe just reduce it a little bit. Doesn't mean you're not going to be making progress, and doesn't mean maybe you're not making the progress that you'd like, but I mean, we all have to remember too is that I think something I have to really remind myself is that at this point, I'm never going to go pro. Like, I'm never going to be running and making money with it. I do this for fun, and I obviously want to be the best that I can be to the degree that I can, but it isn't, it is supposed to like add to my life, and it's supposed to make my life better. And if I'm finding that it's starting to take away, like I'm starting to lose sleep or my anxiety over training is ramping up, or I'm starting to like get angry at my son more often. I'm triggered by things he's doing more often, and I'm getting like snappy or m- angry, or
Mhm.
like maybe frustrated with my husband more. And those sorts of behaviors are coming out. I have to like take a deep, deep look at what the training is, the toll that training is starting to take on me and my family. It's not just like them, like the signals they're giving me. It's like looking in within myself to be like, ooh, this isn't good. Like, I'm starting to have negative effects on my mood. I'm irritable. I'm anxious. I'm a little more anxious. Things are not looking good.
Yeah.
And I'm taking it too far. Right. I have to like reel it back a little bit, or like look at the time I'm taking or whatever is going on, how much I'm obsessing over it, it's getting too far. And so I need to like reel it in a little bit. And I think that's hard to do sometimes, but I think thinking externally at the signals your family's telling you, but you have to also kind of, it takes a lot of introspection, but you have to realize too what's happening internally and those signals that you're also experiencing, and things the way you're reacting to people, or the way you're dealing with
Right.
situations. If it's not so good anymore, and it's starting to affect you, then that's probably also where you need to draw the line a little bit, because it's not worth being so tired all the time that you get really mad at your family or your children because they're running around screaming. You know what I mean? Is That's kind of what kids do.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I know I have that triggers me anyways, that kind of stuff. But when I'm really tired, I'm just like, and if I'm tired all the time and not
Yeah.
taking care of myself, I don't know. It's just something to think about too. Being able to like look deep, think in yourself, and, be able to sort of like look
Yeah, you gotta be
introspective.
introspective
Yeah.
and just look
You can't just like
internal.
block it out. Like, "Oh, I'm
and
training. This is
and
my thing."
I just wanted to kind of close this off with this kind of like closing statement is that when we named this podcast the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, the word journey is just, it's really, really important to
Mhm.
me because we don't walk it alone. We walk this journey with those around us, and those people want to see you succeed. They don't want to see you fail, and they want to see you enjoying the journey. You're not necessarily going to be happy all the
No,
time,
nobody is.
and it's not always going to be, unicorns and rainbows kind of thing. So, there are going to be times where it's hard and you're not necessarily happy, but there should be some level of joy that's there. Your joy is very different from
Mhm.
happiness. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because these people who love you and are committed to you, they want to see you succeed. They're walking this journey with you. And so it's really important to foster those relationships and keep them healthy, because there may come a time where you don't race anymore, or you may race less as we get older. That's a reasonable conclusion to come to. And so what are you left with when you're no longer racing at the same level that you
Right.
are?
You wanna make sure you
You know,
still
have you
have
just have you destroyed all of the
and not
relationships
only that,
around
but, like,
you in order for you to
friendships.
have
Yeah.
accomplished what it is that you wanted
Right.
to accomplish?
Yeah.
What did it
Yeah.
cost you? And I think that that's really something that's important, that you have to sit down as an athlete and say, I really love what I'm doing, but what is it costing me? What is it costing those around me? And these relationships are important. I don't want them to suffer there are compromises that are going to be needed from time to time, but ultimately those compromises have to be taken on by you as the athlete as well. You can't expect them to be the ones that compromise all the time. And I will own that. That is something that has been really hard for me, is that I've been less likely to compromise. And it's something that I continue to try and work on, is my ability to do that. Because I do want those relationships around me to be strong and healthy, because they haven't been before. And I've seen the consequences of them and the cost that you have to bear when that happens is not pleasant.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think that any medal or any kind of experience of a race is worth it. I mean, I have a wall full of medals and a bunch of experiences, but the relationships that I have in my life are way more important than those. And so I have to be just as purposeful with the health of those relationships as I am purposeful with my training as well. And so we have to think about, well, how do I want to, should I approach my relationships the same way that I approach my training? And there was a time when I was going through some therapy, and that was one of the things that my therapist said, is that you have to be an Ironman in your relationship. So it means that I need to pursue my relationship just like I pursue my training. Be purposeful, be consistent, be durable, be diligent about it, just like I do with the other aspects of my life. And so if that's the one thing that I could end this conversation on,
Yeah,
is
I love that to end it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
All right. So do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up?
No, I think that's perfect. Kind of ending it there. Yeah.
No? Just a mic drop kind of opportunity?
But I don't have a mic drop opportunity.
Right.
I don't think I've said
what
I
so
gotta
guys,
say.
if you've enjoyed the conversation that we've had tonight, and you've enjoyed some of the other conversations that we've had, we've got this is episode 79, so there's 78 other conversations that we've had. If you have enjoyed this content and any of it has been helpful to you, or if it's been helpful to those that you've shared it with, we would appreciate it if you would go out and just leave a comment and a review. Those things really, really help others find the podcast. We don't monetize this, and so we don't have sponsors and ads and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to keep this pure. So those comments and reviews really do help bring others to the podcast. If there's a particular topic that we've covered in our library, or this particular episode has kind of struck a chord with you, and you've connected to it, share it with those that you think it would help as well. That definitely is one of the reasons why I know that I wanted to bring this podcast, and I think I speak for Katie as well. If there's any way that we can improve some kind of aspect of your life or help you through something, then the effort that we take to put this on will have been worth it. So we thank you for the time that you do spend with us. It does not go unnoticed, and it does not go unappreciated. So thank you so much. We are pushing more content out into the private Facebook group. We're doing, discussion questions and, kind of pinging the audience out there, trying to spur conversation. So if you have not joined this group and you would like to participate, please consider going out at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. It's on Facebook. You just answer one simple question, and it will let you right on in. Join the conversation and help grow the community. We are both active coaches and taking on athletes onto our rosters. And so if you are interested in coaching or just talking with one of us, or both of us for that matter, you can reach out to us through our respective websites or through the email address that's tied to the podcast. So if you listen to the outro that plays after we sign off, you'll get the email address for the podcast. But you can reach out to Coach Katie at fuel2run.com, or you can reach out to me, Coach Justin, at tabularossaracing.com. We'd be more than happy to talk with you on how we can help you along in your journey and help you accomplish those things that you would like to set out to accomplish. So again, thank you guys for joining us. That signs off on episode number 79, where we've talked about balancing endurance training and relationships. Keeping both things healthy is really important to your longevity in the sport. All right. So thank you guys. We'll see you again next time.
All right.
Talk to you later. That wraps up today's episode of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Endurance sports have a way of teaching us patience, humility, and resilience.
lessons that carry far beyond the workout. Progress in endurance sports doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from consistency, discipline, and doing the work when it's not glamorous. Wherever you are on your endurance journey, keep trusting the process and honoring the work you put in each day. If today's episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone to help on their endurance journey. Don't forget to join the conversation on our social sites to help build and foster a community where we all learn and support one another. We'll be back with more stories and insights from Coach Justin and Katie. Until then, visit the podcast website at theenduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com for more episodes from the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Feel free to send us an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularosaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.